Hello you lovely lot and welcome to another video. My name's Katie and today we're going to play with some black alcohol ink paper. I need to add here, I'm not sponsored by Frisk or affiliated. They literally just reached out to me on Instagram and said, hey, do you want to try this paper? So I'm not under any obligation to post it on social media or anything, but I personally found this quite an interesting supply and I thought I'd share it with you guys. Saying that though, I mean, if you do want to sponsor me or affiliate with me, I'm not going to turn it down. So whilst we've got all these lovely swirling alcohol inks in the background, let me tell you what is black alcohol ink paper. It is a 155 GSM 100% recyclable, ultra smooth and synthetic tear resistant paper. Pigments retain brightness and clarity. It also resists buckling and can be wiped clean, ideal for use with alcohol inks and watercolours. So from what we've deduced by the description on the package, it's very much like a black YUPO paper in principle there. Although there are a few differences, apart from the screamingly obvious one that it's a black paper and not a white paper like YUPO is, there are a few other subtle differences. For example, YUPO paper in itself is actually a very smooth feeling to the touch paper or a surface, and it also really spreads the ink a lot quicker and more rapidly. Also, with your traditional YUPO paper, it really shows the vibrancy of your alcohol inks because it is a white surface underneath. This black alcohol ink paper, on the other hand, although in principle is very similar to YUPO, it's also slightly different. So it is I guess it's a sheet of whatever YUPO's made out of, but it's got a coating over the top. And it's double-sided with that coating. And also the surface, rather than it being really shiny, it's actually quite a matte finish there. Now, as you can see on screen, just at the moment, we've caught this at a good time, I had just put some coloured alcohol inks on there, no mica in there, and there was no white pigments. And it doesn't massively show up, to be honest, and that's because it's transparent ink over the top of a black background, so it's not going to. However, by adding in some mica-based alcohol inks as well as an opaque white or a semi-opaque white, that really does bring out the vibrancy of the colours, and obviously you've got that fantastic contrast between that white ink and that black background there. So the first thing is, your approach to using this medium has got to change. Secondly, the ink doesn't quite spread as rapidly as it would do on a traditional YUPO paper. I mean, don't get me wrong, it moves, but it doesn't quite move as rapidly, and I guess that's down to the coating of the paper and the surface tension of the alcohol ink and that whole combination, which just gets a little bit too scientific for my brain anyway. But those are contributing factors as to why it just behaves in a similar kind of way, but not exactly the same. But if you like using this technique with your regular YUPO paper, then I think using this black alcohol ink paper will be just as fun. You're just going to have to tweak how you approach creating things on there. Now, as I've probably mentioned before, this kind of art isn't the kind of art I tend to do a lot of, mainly because I go a little bit too far with it and I have to feel like I have to turn it into something, and that's just my approach. And I think as well, because I tend to go a little bit too far with the ink application, for me personally, I don't seem to ever get anything I'm truly satisfied with and I can leave it as is. But the beauty with having the slightly matte surface is, it takes paint markers pretty well. After I'd done a batch of swirly inks, we'll say, I thought, let's see what else I can do with this paper, and it just so happens that my paint markers were out and at the ready, and I thought, let's see how it goes. And I think because of that matte surface, it's pretty much like a regular paper. You've got less paint bogies there because obviously it's not going to dry as quickly on there compared to a wood-based paper, for example. It's not going to absorb that paint, so no paint bogies, and it's a very nice smooth application actually. And if you were looking for a nice alternative to use your paint markers on, I actually think this black paper is really good. And if Frisk approached their YUPO paper and actually put a white version of this coating over the top, I think they could have quite a good white surface to use these pens on as well. Regular YUPO paper will mean it'll smudge a little bit quicker because it's a smoother surface, it'll take a little longer to dry, but this black paper is fantastic for paint markers, it's great. And as well, I reckon, though I hadn't got any to hand, but your oil-based paint markers would work really well on this too. Now, I know this isn't the prettiest face I'm drawing on here, but this was the first attempt using paint markers, and I was just playing around and seeing what could go on first. I didn't dare try and use pencil on there because I thought it might just be a little bit too abrasive and might scratch that surface off, and I will get to a couple of issues I found with this surface a little later on in the video. But it's nothing major, and it's probably down to user error more than anything. For me, having a, I guess, pre-textured background can sometimes be a really nice way to combat art block. Sometimes, especially when you're not in the mood to draw but you want to draw, a blank page can be a little bit daunting, so throwing a bit of paint on there, or alcohol inks in this instance, can really help just get you going again. I mean, it's already got something on there which has been out of your control, so you might as well draw over the top of it and see what happens. Another thing I like to do when I've just put a load of stuff on a surface like this is to see what I can find in the shapes that are created. And for this example, I thought, let's see if I can find a dragon. And yes, by this point I did find some oil-based paint markers, and they work just fine on there too. These are the Spectrum Noir ones that I won in a Squirrel Box giveaway at the start of the year, and I still love playing with them. I thought I'd use the silver to really make things stand out and just let the background add all of those textures and details in that I would otherwise draw. Again, it's not the prettiest of dragons, but you know what, I had fun with this, and like I say, especially when you're sort of caught up in a bit of a rut as to what to draw, these exercises are really good to just sort of get your creative flow going and not to take it too seriously and put too much pressure on yourself to create something. I also discovered that paint pens, and I'm going to refer to them differently to paint markers. Paint markers are your Posca type, paint pens are the ones where they're just like a traditional pen really, but they've got an acrylic based ink in there, and they worked really well on there too. For the next piece that's happening on screen right now, I could see a jellyfish. All the dangly bits at the bottom of a jellyfish were what I was seeing with the ink markings I'd done earlier, so I thought, well, this is the perfect opportunity to try and create a bit of an abstract jellyfish here. Obviously the top of the jellyfish I had to render and put in myself because there were no, I guess, clues there from the ink markings, but as you can see, all of that bottom stuff, what is all that stuff? I mean, I guess some of it's tentacles, but it's not like tentacles on an octopus. I don't know, tendrils? But either way, I added the tendrils in as well as all the mushy middle stuff of a jellyfish. You know what, it's a good job I don't study wildlife for a living really, isn't it? Which is kind of funny because, like, as a child growing up in the 90s, I really wanted to be a marine biologist, but really that was just about dolphins, not jellyfish. But of course, I digress there. I guess the point I'm trying to make is sometimes maybe a little bit of random stuff on your page can sort of evoke some ideas for future pieces. Now, I thought I'd push this paper a little bit more to its limit by reactivating the layers beneath with some fresh alcohol and isopropyl alcohol. And it's kind of weird really, because I think there is a chance that you can overload this paper and actually cause the coating to come off. I also think the rubbing alcohol or isopropyl alcohol I was using might have just been a little bit too harsh, and it did cause the surface to crack just a little bit. However, that's not necessarily a bad thing either, because once it had dried, it didn't really flake off. It was just when it was in that semi-dry stage. So just let it fully dry. That's like the mantra of this channel sometimes, just let it fully dry. For this final one, where I actually decide to do something, I could actually see a bit of an outline of a face there with that gold mica. So I got out the trusty gold paint marker. I went for an oil-based one on this one because I do find them a little bit more shinier than the acrylic-based ones. And I thought I'd just add a bit of a face in there, and I actually quite like how it came out. I know this is a bit of a hodgepodge video and there was a lot of pieces going on there, but it was really more about exploring this medium rather than actually creating anything with it. After all, I've never used this paper before. All in all, I found it quite fun to work with. It was quite a relaxing process. It was nice seeing all those colours swirl around, even though I haven't got a clue on how to make it look pretty. I also like, though, how it just gave me a little bit of a nudge to be a bit more, well, it's not that I'm not being creative doing that, but using a bit more of my imagination to find figures and characters and animals in there to see what happens. I like the fact that the paint markers took to it really well though, and I would definitely recommend this for using that particular medium with. No paint bogeys, I mean we're all about that, right? Anyway, I want to say a massive thank you to Frisk for sending me a free sample there. Do appreciate trying new things. And of course, thank you to you guys too, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. There should be some more on screen I think you'll enjoy, and in the meantime, I'll see you lovely lot soon. Bye!